Who are you? That's the question we've all been trained to answer since we could speak. I'm Sarah. I'm an engineer. I'm a father. I'm a student. I'm this. I'm that. We present our identities like name tags, as if they could truly capture the vast mystery of what we are. But here's the truth. All those labels are costumes, beautiful ones, maybe, but costumes nonetheless. And the more tightly we grip them, the more we forget that at our core, we are something far larger, far freer, and far less definable than any identity could ever contain. From birth, society hands us scripts. You are given a name. You are given a gender. You are told which family you belong to, which culture you represent, which religion you might follow. As you grow, the script expands, your school grades, your career path, your relationship status. It becomes a kind of biography that you believe is you. But all of these things are not who you are, they are what you are doing. They are the roles you play in the grand theater of life. And like any good actor, you can switch roles. But the problem is, we forget we're acting at all. Why do we cling so fiercely to these roles? Because they give us a sense of stability. If I'm somebody, then I know my place in the world. It feels safe. But here's the paradox. The more you define yourself, the more you limit yourself. The moment you say, I am this, you've also said, I am not that. You build walls around your own potential. And worse, you start to protect this identity as if it were your actual life. You fear change because it threatens your story. You fear failure because it could rewrite your character in ways you don't like. This is why letting go of identity feels terrifying. It's like stepping into a void. If I'm not my job, my nationality, my beliefs, then what am I? We fear that if we drop the mask, there will be nothing left. But what if that nothing is not emptiness, but openness? What if behind the mask is the real you, not a solid, fixed thing, but a flowing, ever-changing awareness that can never be reduced to a label? Being nobody doesn't mean being worthless. It means being free. Free to flow from one role to another without fear of losing yourself. Think about the times you've been happiest. Was it when you were carefully managing your image? Or was it when you forgot yourself entirely immersed in music, laughter, love, or creation? In those moments, you weren't somebody trying to maintain an identity. You were simply alive. That's the beauty of being nobody. When you are not clinging to a self-image, you become like water, able to take any shape, able to meet each moment without the baggage of who you're supposed to be. And ironically, this is when life becomes the richest. Because you're not busy defending your story, you're living it. When we drop our identity, something extraordinary happens. Other people's opinions lose their power over us. If you're not trying to uphold a particular image, then criticism doesn't shatter you and praise doesn't inflate you. You're no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of external validation. Of course, society doesn't always like this. A person who isn't easily labeled can't be easily controlled. When you're nobody, you can't be boxed in, sold an image, or pressured to conform. That's why so many spiritual traditions talk about ego death. It's not about destroying your sense of self, but about releasing the prison of identity. The Zen masters have a saying, to be nobody is to be everything. At first, that sounds like nonsense, but think about it. When you stop holding on to I am this, you open yourself to being anything. When you let go of your fixed identity, you can fully enter the life of a parent, a friend, a stranger, a lover, a wanderer, without feeling you're betraying some static version of yourself. It's like being an actor who's free to play any role because they're not confused into thinking they are the role. The freedom is in knowing you can change the script at any moment. So, how do we begin to loosen our grip on identity? Start by noticing how often you say or think, I am, and fill in the blank. I am anxious. I am shy. I am successful. I am a failure. Every time you do this, you're locking yourself into a frame. Instead, see these states as temporary. You are feeling anxious, not being anxious. You are experiencing success, not being a successful person forever. Everything about you is in motion. And the more you remember that, the more you realize you've been fluid all along. Dropping identity doesn't mean you erase your history or pretend you're a blank slate. It simply means you stop confusing the map for the territory. Your life story is a beautiful map. It shows where you've been, what you've done. But it's not the same as the living, breathing reality of you in this very moment. And that moment right now is the only place you actually exist. When you're not trapped in the story of who I am, you can meet this moment fresh without dragging yesterday's script into it. That's where the beauty is. That's where the freedom lives. Here's the thing. People will still try to define you. They'll still say, you're the type of person who, or you've always been. But you can smile, knowing their words are only reflections of a moment, not a fixed truth. When you stop being somebody in the way the world demands, you stop running in circles trying to live up to expectations. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. And in that space, you might just find the most liberating truth of all. You were never the role, you were the actor, and the actor is free. Imagine standing on a beach, watching the waves. Each wave rises, takes shape, and then collapses back into the ocean. Your identity works the same way. It rises in moments, I am this, I am that, but then it dissolves, whether you want it to or not. The problem is, most of us try to hold onto the wave, to freeze it in place. We think, this is me forever. But the ocean has other plans. Everything changes, roles shift. Even the things you once felt defined, you can vanish overnight, leaving you wondering who you are without them. This is why clinging to identity can be painful. If your sense of self is wrapped up in your career, losing your job can feel like a death. If it's tied to a relationship, a breakup can leave you shattered. If it's based on youth and beauty, aging can feel like a personal betrayal. But when you stop identifying so deeply with any single role, these changes don't destroy you. You see them for what they are, just waves. They come, they go, and you are the ocean. Vast, spacious, unbroken. The ocean doesn't panic when one wave disappears. It knows more are coming. Here's something Alan Watts often said. You're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. Think about that. You don't have to drag yesterday into today. You don't have to carry the heavy baggage of all the versions of you that no longer fit. Yet, we cling. We keep the old clothes that don't suit us anymore. We keep living in old mental houses even when they're falling apart. Why? Because stepping into the unknown feels risky. If I'm not my old self, then who am I? That's the doorway. That's the invitation to find out. When you let go of the need to be somebody, life becomes more playful. You start to see identity like a set of costumes you can wear for fun rather than armor you must wear for survival. One day you might be the teacher, the next the student, the next the fool, and that's perfectly fine. You no longer need to win in the game of who's more important, more successful, or more admired. Because if you're not trying to be somebody, you're free from the exhausting competition. You can simply be without needing the world's scoreboard to tell you how you're doing. People often misunderstand this as detachment in the cold, uncaring sense, but it's the opposite. When you're not trapped in defending a self-image, you're actually more open to love, to connection, to intimacy. Why? Because you're not constantly filtering everything through, what does this say about me? You can truly listen to others, meet them where they are, and be with them without needing to fit them or yourself into a box. The irony is that when you stop trying to be special, you become profoundly unique, not because you're manufacturing it, but because you're letting your natural self shine without interference. Consider children. Before the heavy weight of identity is placed on them, they move freely between roles. A child can be a pirate, a chef, a dancer, a scientist, all within the span of an afternoon. They don't worry if it's consistent with their personal brand. They just play. That's the spirit you reclaim when you let go of being somebody. You remember that life itself is a kind of play, not in the sense of being trivial, but in the sense of being fluid, creative, and ever-changing. When you see it this way, you can embrace life's changes with curiosity rather than fear. Dropping identity also reveals how interconnected we are. When you're clinging to me and mine, you live in a constant state of separation, me versus them, my side versus theirs. But when you're nobody in the ego sense, those walls begin to crumble. You start to feel the subtle truth that you're not separate from life, you are life. The same consciousness that looks through your eyes looks through every pair of eyes. The same ocean that makes your wave makes every wave. And suddenly the idea of competing with others feels as absurd as one wave trying to outshine another. This doesn't mean you have to abandon all preferences or choices. Being nobody doesn't mean you drift aimlessly without any desires or values. It means you hold them lightly. You can prefer one path over another without building your entire identity around it. When you do this, you become more adaptable. You can pivot when life changes course because you're not gripping the wheel with white knuckles, terrified of losing who you are. And strangely enough, this flexibility often brings you closer to the life you truly want because you're not so busy resisting reality. The question then is, how do you live this out in a world that constantly pressures you to be somebody? You start small. Notice the moments when you feel the need to defend yourself, to justify your choices, to make sure people see you a certain way. Pause. Ask yourself, what am I protecting right now? Is it my actual life or just my image? Then, experiment with letting it go. Let someone think you're wrong without correcting them. Let a small criticism pass without defending your ego. You might find it's not as fatal as you imagined. Over time, you'll see that being nobody is not about erasing yourself, it's about dropping the layers that keep you from being fully alive. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that the truest joy doesn't come from being admired, respected, or remembered. It comes from living in this moment with open hands, able to receive whatever life is offering right now. Because when you're not clinging to who you are, you're finally free to experience the one thing that matters most. Not your story, not your image, but life itself. Here's a powerful practice. Whenever you introduce yourself, try describing yourself without mentioning your job, achievements, or roles. Just talk about what you love, what excites you, what you've been noticing lately. It feels strange at first, almost naked. We're so used to hiding behind the shields of titles and labels that without them, we feel exposed. But that's exactly the point. You start learning that who you are is not the same as the things you do. And the more you practice, the easier it gets to meet people without performing for their approval. In the West, much of our culture is built on the story of self-improvement, becoming a better version of yourself. While there's nothing wrong with growth, this constant pressure can turn into a subtle form of self-rejection. It whispers, you're not enough yet. You have to earn your worth. But the moment you tie your worth to an image, you've built a prison. Every improvement feels temporary because you're chasing an ever-moving target. When you let go of being somebody, you also let go of this exhausting race. You don't stop growing, you just stop growing to prove yourself. Alan Watts often compared life to music. The point of music is not to get to the end of the song, it's to enjoy the playing of it. If life is a piece of music, then identity obsession is like rushing to the final note just so you can say you played it. When you stop being somebody, you can dance with life instead of racing through it. Every note becomes enjoyable because you're no longer worried about how the song makes you look. You're simply in it, feeling the rhythm, without a finish line in sight. Of course, some people will misunderstand you. In a world obsessed with self-definition, being nobody can be threatening to others. They might say, you don't take life seriously, or you're avoiding responsibility. But in reality, you're taking life more seriously than ever because you're engaging with it directly without the distortions of ego. You're not hiding in your resume, your Instagram bio, or your reputation. You're right here, living it. The irony is, this often makes you more reliable and present for others because you're not constantly trying to manage an image in the background. So how do you balance this with the practical world, where people still expect labels and titles? Think of identity as a tool, not a truth. You can put on the costume of your profession when you need to, and then take it off when you don't. You can play the role without confusing it for your essence. This way, you're able to function in society without losing yourself in it. You can still be the doctor, the artist, the parent, or the engineer without believing those roles are the sum total of what you are. The beauty of being nobody is that it doesn't erase your uniqueness, it reveals it. When you're no longer locked into performing an identity, your natural quirks, curiosities, and talents rise to the surface effortlessly. You become more unpredictable, in the best way, less constrained by "people like me don't do that" thinking. You might try things you never imagined, explore paths you once ignored, or connect with people you previously would have dismissed. And because you're not protecting a rigid image, failure doesn't sting as much. It just becomes part of the dance. There's a profound humility in this way of living. You no longer need to be the smartest person in the room. You no longer need to have the last word. You no longer need to win every argument or prove your worth in every interaction. This humility doesn't make you smaller, it makes you spacious. It creates room for other people's truths, for new ideas, for growth without the constant friction of ego defense. And in that spaciousness, you discover that the joy of life isn't in dominating it, it's in participating fully, without needing to be someone special. Think of it this way: identity is like a mask. Masks can be beautiful and useful, but if you glue one to your face, it becomes suffocating. Being nobody is learning to take the mask off when you need air. And when you do, you realize something surprising: you can breathe easier. Conversations feel lighter. Decisions feel freer. Even challenges feel less personal because you're no longer wrapping them around your sense of self. The less you cling to who you think you are, the more life can show you who you truly are. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual unlearning. You'll notice moments when the old need to be somebody flares up, maybe in a social setting, or at work, or even on social media. Instead of judging yourself, just notice it. Smile at it like greeting an old friend. Say, there's that little actor in me again, wanting to take the stage. And then, if you choose, you can step back and watch the play from the audience instead of being trapped in the performance. In time, this becomes second nature. You still play roles, but you don't lose yourself in them. You still tell stories about who you are, but you know they're just stories. And in that freedom, something beautiful happens. Life becomes lighter, yet deeper. You can hold joy without fearing it will vanish, and you can hold sorrow without believing it defines you. Because you're no longer a fixed somebody fighting to survive, you're the vast, open space in which all the somebodies come and go. Once you see through the illusion of being somebody, you start to notice how much of your life was spent protecting that illusion. The arguments you had, the sleepless nights worrying about what others thought, the energy poured into appearing a certain way, all of it begins to look unnecessary. You realize that the image you were protecting never really existed. It was a projection in other people's minds, constantly shifting depending on their own beliefs, biases, and moods. How exhausting it was to try to control something you could never truly control. Letting it go is like putting down a heavy backpack you forgot you were carrying. And here's the magic: when you stop trying to be somebody, you become easier to love. Not because you're doing anything to earn love, but because you're open. People can feel when they don't have to walk on eggshells around you, when they don't have to feed your ego for you to feel safe. Relationships become less about proving your worth and more about sharing your experience. Love flows more freely, not because you've perfected yourself, but because you've stopped trying to be perfect. Ironically, by letting go of being special, you become deeply special in a way that doesn't need recognition. Alan Watts often spoke about the absurdity of taking ourselves too seriously. Life, he said, is a kind of play, a cosmic game where the self hides from itself by pretending to be all these different characters. When you're nobody, you see the humor in it. You can laugh at your own mistakes without feeling diminished. You can admit you don't know without shame. You can even face your fears with a certain lightness, because you understand they're part of the grand performance. And in that laughter, there's wisdom. There's a recognition that we were never meant to hold on so tightly. This doesn't mean you won't sometimes get caught up in identity again. You will. The ego is a clever actor, always ready to jump back on stage. But each time you notice it, you'll have the choice to step away. You'll remember that the beauty of being nobody is that you can be anybody in any given moment. You're free to respond instead of react, to play instead of defend, to live instead of perform. The world becomes less like a battlefield and more like a playground. And that shift changes everything about how you move through your days. Think about the moments in your life when you've been most alive, completely immersed in what you were doing, without thinking about how you looked or whether you were doing it right. Those moments are identity, free moments. Nobody was performing in those instances. You were simply there. The practice of being nobody is really the practice of making those moments more common. Not by forcing them, but by removing the obstacles, mainly the constant need to manage your image. Life has always been here, waiting for you to show up without your mask. And here's perhaps the most liberating part. When you let go of identity, you stop comparing yourself to others. Without the scoreboard of who's ahead or behind, there's no need for jealousy or resentment. You see other people's successes as beautiful expressions of life, not as threats to your own worth. You see their failures as part of the same dance you're in, not as proof of your superiority. Comparison loses its teeth when you're no longer playing the game of being somebody. You're just here, doing your part in the unfolding of the universe. Some might say, but if I'm nobody, won't I lose motivation? And the answer is no. You might lose the anxiety that used to drive you, but what replaces it is curiosity and love. You start doing things because they feel alive to you, not because they'll make you look good. You work not for applause, but for the joy of creating. You help others not for recognition, but because you can't help it, it feels natural. It's not the death of motivation, it's the birth of authentic motivation. Being nobody doesn't mean disappearing from life, it means showing up without the armor. It's a shift from how do I look to what is this moment asking of me. You still have preferences, passions, and dreams, but you hold them lightly. You still set goals, but you don't collapse if they don't happen. You're more flexible, more open, more available to the surprises life offers. And perhaps, most importantly, you're no longer waiting for the world to validate you before you can feel okay. In the end, the beauty of being nobody is that it returns you to the truth you had as a child before you learned to be a role. You were just here. You didn't need to prove anything to be worthy of love or belonging. You lived in direct contact with life, without a thick layer of self-consciousness in between. And while you can't go back to innocence, you can go forward into awareness, a kind of second innocence, where you know the game, but you play anyway. Not because you need to win, but because you enjoy playing. So maybe the invitation is this. Take off the mask for a while. See what happens if you stop introducing yourself as your job, your achievements, your roles. See what happens when you let conversations be real instead of rehearsed. Notice how much lighter life feels when you don't have to protect an image. Notice how much deeper your connections feel when you meet people as you are, not as you think you should be. Because in the end, the freedom of being nobody is the freedom to be everything, to be the sky instead of the clouds, the ocean instead of the waves, the vastness instead of the mask.